I'm not going to back down on saying that that is when I get my seed drops. I don't need to wait. In lignified pasture in this state, my livestock would be suffering. I wouldn't get the daily weight gains that I'm after. Calving season's in probably less than 2 months. Most of my calves should be dropped on the ground. If it's taken twice as long, you're putting less weight on your animals. I covered it in the previous video. This lick block is very beneficial over winter because the rumen has to effectively break it down before it can put more feed in. You don't want to go below that 50% if you can help it, because you're going to stunt the root growth or the growth of the plant. And if you keep bringing your cattle in where it's in that diaper stage, below that 50%, you're going to end up killing off the plant. The pondings there, if they had too much carbohydrates, this is the telltale sign. That would be stacked 3-4 inches high, and it definitely wouldn't have ponding. So I know that rumen is still effectively working, and that's a telltale sign where you should be hopping down to your local rural supplies and getting some mineral and lick blocks. So it's all scalable. Whether you got a big property or a small property, it's all scalable to this regenerative farming. It's a lot more better for time management. If I had a choice of the matter, the less animals like I've got at the moment with 2 bulls or using 6 to 8 heifers in the same area over a shorter time, I'd definitely go for the higher stocking density. You're getting G'day folks, Jason from the Udder Farm. As you can see, I'm with my 2 bulls. They're still currently resting over the winter break. We're going to do a bit of a pasture walk today. Have a look what I've put them into, where they're going into, and where they've been. I get a lot of controversial emails and also messages left on my Facebook, but mainly my YouTube channel in regards to, I always make the comment that I try and keep my pasture in a vegetative state all year round, because that's when it's higher in energy. The moment you let it come to the teenage stage and then that adolescent stage, or where it comes to seed head and drops the seeds, the plant diminishes in energy. And lignified pasture in this state takes twice as long for the rumen to break down. I'm not going to back down on saying that I never try and let my pasture come to seed unintentionally, or intentionally I should say. I'm always trying to keep it in that vegetative state. And people say, how do you get that seed drop? That is absolutely crazy. You need the seeds to germinate and thicken the pasture. And to that I say, yes, you are correct to a certain extent. You don't let your pasture come to seed, because then, like I keep saying, once it gets to that seed head, it's done its job. It's in that adolescence stage and it's draining in energy. And then it becomes lignified. The lignified pasture takes twice as long for the rumen to break down. If it's taken twice as long, you're putting less weight on your animals, because the rumen has to effectively break it down before it can put more feed in. And when it comes to thickening the pastures, the reason why I don't let it come to seed is because nature makes it come to seed itself. I cannot keep up with, about 3 times a year, whether I like it or not, I can't keep up with moving my cattle through the property and it comes to seed like it is now. 80% of this pasture is seeded. This is where I get my drops for the year. That happens 2 or 3 times a year. If I waited all year round and left with lignified, depleted energy in pasture, my livestock would be suffering. I wouldn't get the daily weight gains that I'm after. And as you can see, I'm clearly getting my seed drops, and this is unintentional. And that's why I say you never wait. You do your best to keep it in a vegetative state, but it's going to be a couple of times a year where it's come to seed, and that's when you get your seed drops. The area we're in now, from that star picket up through this timeless fencing system, up to where the boys are now, was a 24-12, it was a 32-hour graze. Normally with my 6 head, I would have this graze in a 12-hour period. Because I've only got the 2 boys, I've left them in there 3 times as long, because I've only got a third of the amount of animals. When the boys first come in here, the pasture was probably up to there, the top of my thigh. And as you can see now, there is that seeded pasture which is still at that height. This hasn't been trampled down, but they've trampled a fair bit down. They've eaten that third, lied over a third, and left the third standing. This will now drop the seed, and I'll get those seed drops. Also, where they've laid that armour down and thatch, that seed is lying on the ground now. So that's where I'm also getting the seed drops into the soil. And a bit of rain on top of that will then push it through the thatch layer And when they'll bring the cows back through it again, you'll get that seed to soil contact. So this is a good graze. Had I had it higher stocking density, I probably would have got a lot more laid down. But because I'm resting the bulls at the moment for winter, and I'm bringing all my heifers into that cycle, once they all drop calving seasons in probably less than 2 months, most of my calves should be dropped on the ground. Hence why I'm isolating the boys at the moment. Wait until calving season finished, give the girls 21 days rest after they drop the calf, and then I'll put the boys in, hence why they're here and the heifers are out the other farm. But as you get back to the graze now, you can see they've gone through and trimmed off a lot of this grass. They've eaten a lot of stem, like I said, it's all come to seed, but they've eaten that stem off. So even though it's lignified, the rumen is taking longer to break down, but there is sporadic areas of white clover in there. And as we know, white clover is high in protein and very digestible because it's high in moisture, high in protein. Hence why I don't need to give these boys any protein supplements, because they're getting all this pasture by themselves over these winter months and not sharing it. So they're getting a fair bit of protein. The only thing I will add to that is one thing I do put in the paddocks. I've just got to find it now. Here's a lick block. I covered it in the previous video. This lick block is very beneficial over winter because, as you can see, a lot of it has come to seed and a lot of it's dried out, lignified, so they're not getting the nutrients required out of that pasture. This is a lot greener here than it is on the other farm because this has had time to rest and also had 6 years of regenerative farming, which has thickened up this pasture, and it's got a lot more clover in here than it has out the other farm. So this is just a 365 mineral block that I supplement with my livestock with over a winter period while some mineral feeders out of action. That way they can top up on any deficiencies they have over winter out of this block. And as you can see, they've gave that an absolute caning. That was square when I put it in here, and it's getting round. I reckon by the end of winter, that should be the shape of a soccer ball. I know they've been licking it because it was set here probably 20 foot off the fence line yesterday, and I picked them up off the fence last night. So either they were kicking it around like a soccer ball or they were licking it all last night. And then one of the reasons why I'm only giving them a mineral lick block and not adding urea block is because here there's a fair bit of protein. That's pretty typical, the amount of clover, white clover I've got sporadically spread over the property. So they're getting their fair share of protein. So I don't need to add the additional protein or urea to make them eat this drier pasture, because this is a lot greener than the pasture, like I said, out in the other farm. So they don't need the urea. Urea forces them, it stimulates the appetite and forces them to eat more. This area through here was exactly like that white clover through there. First thing they sniffed out was when I moved them here this morning, which was coming up to 8 hours ago, is all the areas of clover, and they went and smashed that first. So like I said, it's high in protein, it's faster digestibility. That's why they went for it. Now they're going round and trimming off all the rest of the plants. Because I'm leaving them in here now for be a 32, 36 hour period, what I find is they go through and eat the greener pastures first, all the way through. That's about 24 hours. And around about that 12 hours to go, that 24 hour period, they come look, when I walk past, they're looking for me to move them. Because I want to get this chew down a lot over winter, as you can see, well, this is gone as well. That's a lot greener. They get this chew down a lot more because we're not far off spring. When they get those rains, I don't want this getting away from me. So I'm driving them harder now. So I know they're getting the nutrients out of the greener pasture. They're also picking up some of this browner stuff, so they're getting carbohydrates. None of the manure at this point in season is runny because it's not high in energy, high in moisture. It's slowly depleting in energy, less moisture, hence why you need the mineral block to get any supplements they are deficient in over winter. But they're getting a mouthful of green and dry, and that's also stopping the rumen, or also, should I say, the digestibility is lower, so you're not getting those watery manure when it comes out at the back end. Even though they've been in here just under 8 hours now, it's a lot higher than the pasture we just come out of. Like I said, they've still got, they've got another, what, 24, that 20, 28 hour mark to go in here. So they go through and eat all the greener stuff first, because I've left them in here, if they're still hungry, then they go and eat the less palatable material down in height, and that's what I'm after, because if I don't do anything with it now, when it comes that spring, I'll have a lot of this seeded pasture, dead pasture, the green flush is trying to come through. What I'm trying to do is deplete most of this down to around that 50% height. So I have a tendency to try and graze at 10% more than I generally would in summer and leave it at that 60%. Just because I know when that spring comes and the rain, the nitrogen in the rain, it absolutely just bellows the pasture away, and I can't move the animals fast enough on this property for the growth rate. So I'm happy to sacrifice that 10% now and go below 60 and keep it at 50. But you don't want to go below that 50% if you can help it, because you're going to stunt the root growth or the growth of the plant. So I can say you don't want to be grazing below that 50%, but it's very hard with 2 animals in an area this size. You normally have 6, because they will go around and selectively graze. There's no competition between the 2 like there is 6. So they will definitely overgraze some of that palatable material and leave a lot of the drier stuff, the lignified stuff standing, but that can't be helped. As much as we preach, we try and keep it at that 60% height, there's going to be times where you cannot keep it at that 60% like I am now. It varies time to time during the season. Like I said, I can't bring the heifers in here because they're resting, only the 2 bulls, and that's when they selectively graze around it. But when that summer flush comes and brings it all through, a lot of the higher stuff will be lignified and be standing there, and that green flush will come through, and that's beneficial because they're getting a mouthful of green and a lot more brown carbohydrates, and that will, how do I say, can pack some of the manure in more. It sort of firms up the manure rather than having it diarrhea and runny if it was absolutely 100% flushing green pasture, which is going through him. So even though I'm going down to that 50% and some of the more palatable stuff is overgrazed below that 50% mark, the main thing is you give it 100% recovery. Don't bring them back in, because you know there's certain areas of being overgrazed. Let that come to recovery before you bring them back in, because that'll be the most palatable. Because you've overgrazed it, it's in that diaper stage. And that's when it's most sweeter and higher in energy. They'll come back and they will eat that before any other plant. And if you keep bringing your cattle in where it's in that diaper stage, below that 50%, you're going to end up killing off the plants because it hasn't got time to recover and build up that solid root system again, because you've grazed it below that 50%. You've stunted the root system for around about 17 days. And if you bring it back in too soon, the root system will get smaller and smaller, and that plant will die. You'll end up getting desertification across your property. You lose paddocks of continual grazing before it comes the chance to get to that teenage stage, and the plant will die off. It just can't recover. So you've got to make sure it's rested before you bring them back in. And in springtime, when that rain comes, like I said, I'll show you when it comes, it just takes off. And I cannot keep up with the growth, and that's why I'm not too worried about isolated areas that these 2 boys are overgrazing now. Even though I'm saying they're eating a lot of carbohydrates, this is a lot more greener than out at the other property, and I know their rumen is effectively working, because if I come here, look at the ponding and that manure. That would only have to be, that would be probably 1.5 inches high. The ponding's there. If they had too much carbohydrates, this is the telltale sign. That would be stacked 3-4 inches high, and it definitely wouldn't have ponding. So I know that rumen is still effectively working, efficiently working, and I put that down to not only the amount of protein I've got through the white clover, but it's also the green pasture and the lick block. The lick is giving the nutrients for that rumen to go through the animal that it's deficient in over winter. And that's why mineralising at winter time is very beneficial. This pasture here would have to be grazed. I reckon that's probably 8 to 10 days ago. That area down there is very brown. The reason that's very brown is last week, probably the week before actually, 2 weeks ago, we had temperatures down to 3 degrees. Come down here and that was just all white out. Nick was saying that there was ice. I was away at the time and there was just picking up slates of ice off there, and that's why that is dead. A bit of a green tinge coming through it now. And the boys were feeding up there. That's still a bit brown, but there's a bit more greener forage up there. The reason why this is green here, this was only grazed 3 days ago. It's a lot greener up here because this is higher in altitude than that low spot over there, so it's not getting frosted. That's predominantly, a lot of that is cooch. There's a bit of paspaling up top there. They smashed all those green leaves off, and that's cooch. That used to be clay all the way through here. If you look at my early videos, that was a clay hill. The idea is we never overgrazed that. We gave it rest, and now this cooch has come through. It's had a chance for the roots to take over, and it's really thickened up across that hill now. And if I pop over here, you can't get a better definition than perfect ponding we've got here. Check out that water pond there. I just checked the rain gauge, we had 1 inch overnight, and that is why it's called ponding. There's a perfect pond right there. Normally, if that was stacked up, like I was saying, there's no water would be holding in the top of that. That pond there has got water in it. So that's why it's perfect ponding. That's where it gets a name from. It makes that bowl or dam-like pond on top. And that is a perfect example of holding water in a ponding condition. That rumen is working effectively. You'll also find over winter, they've grazed through here. This would be no more than, I'd say, that just under that foot height. And over winter, all the way through there, the leaves off that shrub have been eaten. That's how I know over winter that you're not getting the minerals out of the soil like you do over summer. They don't touch these leaves over summer. They only touch them because they're not getting the nutrients out of the grass, and they're looking for it in the other plants or other trees or shrubs that they generally wouldn't touch over summer. So that in itself is a perfect telltale sign that you need to give winter minerals to livestock. When they start eating shrubs like an undesirable as lantana, wattle trees, or any shrub for that matter, they're on the other farm, they're going out and they're eating around through the creek. Adjacent to the creek, we've got lomandras. They don't touch them all year round, but they're eating the lomandras now because they're not getting the nutrients they require. And that's a telltale sign where you should be hopping down to your local rural supplies and getting some mineral and lick blocks. As you can see, this thatch is laid all the way down through here. And that's the power of 2 animals. You can get the same armour laid down with 2 animals as you can 6. You just need to either shorting up or make the area smaller, or the same amount of area for a more amount of time. They will eventually walk around searching for food, and they will eventually lay the thatch down because you're giving them effectively you're giving them the pasture's getting the same amount of hooves over it. It just happens to be a longer period of time. The 2 cows have got to walk around a lot more than you do 6 animals in a short amount of time to get the same effect. So it's all scalable. Whether you've got a big property or a small property, it's all scalable to this regenerative farming. You give it a smaller area with 2 animals and you can get a higher stocking density, or a bigger area for a longer period of time. If I had a choice for the matter, the less animals like I've got at the moment with 2 bulls, or using 6 to 8 heifers in the same area over a shorter time, I'd definitely go for the higher stocking density. You're getting more manure distribution on the ground, the urine, so you get more minerals or recycling back through, less selective grazing, and you're getting more carbon laid down. You wouldn't have as many seed heads left with 6 animals because they'd have a tendency to walk around a lot more and lay that seeded down. Even though I've got 2 in there now, they do a good job if you leave them there 3 times as long because you only got a third of the animals. But you find you get a lot more thatch laid down with the 6 animals in a shorter period than 2 because they still have the tendency to overgraze, more palatable with 2. But in times like this, when I have to separate my herd, because I don't want to have calving all throughout the year, I want it at one point where they drop on the ground, you've only got a needle in one time, do whatever you need to do, whether it be dehorn, whether it be denacker. You can work on all the animals or all the calves at the same time rather than sporadically throughout the year. It's a lot more better for time management. So walking through here now, like I said, this will probably be close to the last winter graze through here now. There's not much more I can graze through here. Maybe in a month's time, but it won't be definitely for the 36-hour period. It'll only be like an 8-hour period, if anything. Otherwise, you'd have a tendency to overgraze. So this is where they've been in or come out of, and this is where they're in for at least another 26 more hours. And this is where they'll be going into once they come out of there. And that'll be close to a 24, 32-hour graze in there. I can 100% guarantee that that big area of clover will not be there in the first 2 hours or less than an hour of these boys getting in here. In this area they'll be moving into in a couple of days, you can see it's exceptionally green for this time of the year. We're practically halfway, if not 3/4 of the way through winter. And for this to be this green is really good. And I put it down to starting my regenerative journey 6 years ago. Instead of continual grazing, I'll have no pasture like I have now. If I was continually grazing like I did 6 years ago, it would be dead and I'll have to be bale feeding. But as you can see, there's loads of white clover. Some of the white clover's dying off, so that's good because I'll get that seed drop back into the pasture now. So they've still got a lot of forage, seeded forage and green forage to go through here. So they're getting the protein they need, they're getting the minerals from the mineral block that they require in the deficiencies they're not getting at this time of the year. Anyway guys, we've got to head out the other farm now, we've got a fence to do, so have a good morning, have a terrific afternoon and an awesome evening wherever you watch us from, and we'll catch you later.